Giving all praise, honor, glory to Yahawah, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, Rakakwadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and a sincere shalom to the Akim that's out there pushing the sincerity and the truth and the sound doctrine. This is going to be a video on Wisdom of Solomon 17. This is something we went over, maybe a few years ago. And you can see here, terror strikes the Egyptians at night. This is going, more so, I guess, more into detail, if you will, into one of the plagues of Egypt that fell upon Egypt was darkness. So, Wisdom of Solomon kind of expounds on it a little bit, and really captures the psychological part of it, right? And I'm doing this video because Passover was a couple of days ago, Wednesday. Today's Friday, so it was Wednesday night. When this happened was around the time of the Passover. When the Passover, right around the time at the exact time of the Passover was the last plague, or one of the last plagues, was the firstborn children. All right, the death of the firstborn sons. All right, but this is all right around the same time, and so I'm really doing this video to explain or really elaborate on why we do our very best, to the very best of our ability, to keep the law, statutes, commandments. All right, but while we also have faith with it, because we understand that we can't keep the laws 100%, but what we're doing is we're trying. You know what I mean? We're trying the very best we can. However way we can do it, we're going to try to do it. All right, but it's explaining some of the things that the Lord Yahawah BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI protects us from, has protected us from, and will protect us from. All right, so like I said, I'm just going to kind of read through this. I got it in the GNT, just so it could be a little easier, to really understand of like what's going on. So we're going to start at the verse 1. It says, "O Lord, your acts of judgment are marvelous and hard to explain. That is why people who had not taught about them went astray. When lawless people imagined that they had their holy nation in their power, they were themselves imprisoned in a long night of darkness. They lay in their own houses, shut off from your eternal care. They thought their sins had been secret, right, and unnoticed, shielded from view by a dark curtain of forgetfulness. But now they were horribly afraid, confused, and terrified by ghostly forms. Not even the dark corners where they lay, not even the dark corners where they lay could protect them from the fear. They were surrounded by horrible noises. Grim ghosts with gloomy faces appeared before their eyes. No fire had power to give them light, and the brilliant stars could do nothing to relieve that deathly darkness." Which means this is, if you ever just sat there in a really, really, really dark room, maybe like a dark basement or something like that, and you sat there and you really stare hard enough, you'll start seeing things. All right, you'll start seeing things. Now, this is both psychological, obviously, and it's both spiritual, because these spirits are real. All right, there are brothers, elders, brothers that have seen them 1,000%, man. Right. So this is darkness that you can actually feel. All right, this is darkness that you can actually feel. So for all you people out there, and I'm going to get back to this because this is a whole chapter. For all you people out there that say, well, God is all loving and this, that, and the other, all you got to do is remember the plagues of Egypt, including what? the death of the firstborn sons. You know, the Lord is the one. He explains that he's the one that did it. Do you think now is going to be any different? All right. What do you think the Passover was about? And that's why, I'm reading this too, is to, get the people to understand, the feeling of the Passover, the atmosphere of the Passover and the times that we're in right now and the times that we were in before. You know, it was a very urgent and a very dreadful time. It wasn't pretty. These Passovers that these other camps are having it's the complete opposite of this is the complete opposite spirit that we should be in, man. We are in a time of war. We were in a time of war before. Things is really get ready to ramp up. Things were ramping up before. All right. Can you imagine, and we're going to read it. Let's keep going. It says there was only I'm at verse 6. It says there was only a dreadful fire lit by no man, lit by no human hand, that shone on them, and in their terror they believed that the real world was even worse than the things they imagined. Oh my goodness! It says the illusions produced by their magic tricks, right, were put to shame. Their prayers, you know what I mean? Their incense, pretty much. And the Egyptians, they had their own gods. Like, they believed in the crocodile god and stuff like that. Remember, the staff being thrown down and stuff like that. And it's the same thing today. What are some of the magic tricks that are being shown today that's going to be put to shame eventually? The mark of the beast. That's one of them. That's one main one. But right now, the medicines, the vaccines, and everything that you see, the social media, yeah, that's another so-called magic trick. That CERN project, this social media has destroyed the people's spirits. So now look at them. But all that stuff is going to be put to shame. The apparitions that we're seeing today and stuff like that are really in people. Those are produced by their magic tricks, pretty much, if you want to call it that. Right? It's an act of sorcery. These devils know that everything is spiritual. All right. Anyway, it says, and all the wisdom they had boasted of came to nothing. Right. So the wisdom, their military might, their powers, their prayers, their gods and everything came to nothing. It was nothing. Do you think today in the future is going to be any different? The Egyptians today, Esau, Edom, and all the other nations have the same mindset as the Egyptians, because this is considered Egypt. This is considered Rome, especially Rome, and all those wicked empires mingled in one. Egypt's mindset and America's mindset is no different, right? No different at all. America says nothing can touch me. Egypt said the same thing. Rome said the same thing. They all said the same thing. And look at what the hell is happening to America today. Look at what happened to Rome. Look at what's happening to Egypt in this very scripture. Look what happened to Babylon. If you really think about it, the Assyrians should really be in rulership still. Why aren't they in rulership still? Okay, well, things happen. Okay, here come the Babylonians. Okay, well, things happen. Medo-Persians, Grecians. Things happen. Now here we are, Roman Empire, which is considered the iron for a reason because of their military might. Why the hell aren't they in rulership? You know what I mean? You could say that they technically still are because it's their daily wound healed, but why is it still not called the Roman Empire? What you're looking at right now is a neo-Roman Empire. That's pretty much what we're living in right now. But as far as the actual Roman Empire, the actual one, like why aren't they in rulership right now? Right? So what you see right now and all these things happening to these Egyptians, who do you think is getting ready to happen when all hell breaks loose? Right? Oh my goodness, man. Oh, and the darkness at night. There are gonna be no street lights when this place shuts down, the EMP and all that stuff. Man, there ain't gonna be no street lights and nothing like that. It's gonna be total darkness. It's gonna be no different. All right. Anyway, it says I'm at 8. All right. It says they had a claim that they could drive away all the fears and illnesses of sick minds, but it says, but now they themselves were sick with silly, groundless fears. Even though, so it says, even though nothing dangerous had actually happened, they were terrified by hissing snakes and animals advancing on them. Right, so they heard snakes because they couldn't see. You know what I mean? So when you can't see anything, but you're hearing something coming at you, and it's just like, whoa, what the? You know what I mean? It seems like you're in a shock and you're in a complete panic, but you're hearing it. Just picture yourself real quick in a or a dome of total darkness. You hearing animals and snakes coming at you. You don't know how to react because you can't see, and all you could do is just cower in fear. Because it will try to swing at the air. You know what I mean? And try to, I guess you best to figure yourself. I don't know. Right? It says, and so they died, shaking with fear, afraid to even open their eyes, right? Yet unable to keep them shut. That's serious, man. It says they were afraid to open their eyes, but they couldn't even keep them shut. That's insane. Um, it says wickedness is cowardly. So yeah, it says wickedness is cowardly in itself and stands self-condemned. Someone with a guilty conscience will always imagine things to be worse than than they really are. That is true. Yeah, that is true. If you know damn well that you're guilty of something and you feel like you're about to get caught, you start imagining things, you start going crazy. Yeah, that is true. Like if you grew up with parents, you're guilty of something. This is like, yeah, uh you start really imagining things, that worse than what's actually going to happen. That's that guilt. Anyway, it says, fear is nothing but the failure to use the help that reason gives. It says, when you lack the confidence to rely on reason, you give in to the fears caused by ignorance. Yeah. It says, all night long, those people slept the same restless sleep, even though the night held no power over them, since it came uh, from the powerless depths of the world of the dead. It says they were chased by hideous forms and lay paralyzed. Whoa. As they surrendered themselves to the sudden, unexpected fear. Um, yeah, yeah. Let me read that over again. That kind of got me right there. That's crazy. It says they were chased by hideous forms and lay paralyzed as they surrendered themselves to the sudden, unexpected fear that came over them. People would suddenly collapse and lie locked in the chains of their own fear. Farmers, shepherds, and laborers out in the countryside were captured by the same inevitable fate. Wow, so that caught everybody, not just like the metropolitan area, so called, quote unquote, but everybody, farmers, shepherds, and laborers out in the countryside of Egypt, pretty much, because they had a countryside, um, um, were captured by the same inevitable fate and bound in the darkness by the same invisible chain. They were panic stricken by the sighing of the wind, ooh, or by the singing of birds in the trees, or by the roar of rushing water, or by the rumbling of a falling rock, or by the sound of unseen creatures running about, or by the savage roaring of wild animals, or by the echoes from the mountains. In the full light of day, the rest of the world went about its business undisturbed, right? It says only those people were covered by this heavy night, and right, because it was 3 days, or considered 3 days, right? It says a foretaste of the darkness of death that was waiting for them. It says they were a burden to themselves that was even heavier than the darkness. Yeah, that's insane, man. Right? So uh let's go to the next chapter actually. Oh, I meant to switch the translation. Give me a second. That was the GNT. I don't know why I did that. All right. We'll read a little bit of 18. Yeah, because this is pretty good. Light shines on the Israelites. It says, yet all the while a brilliant light was shining for your holy people. Their enemies heard their voices but couldn't see them. They envied the good fortune of your people who were not suffering. Those enemies could at least be thankful that the people they had wronged were not taking vengeance on them now, right? It says so they begged them to leave. Then you guided your people as they traveled through a country they did not know. You guided them with a pillar of fire. It was like a sun that would not harm them on that glorious journey. But their enemies, who were not allowed to see the light, deserved to be prisoners in darkness, because they had made prisoners of your people. So, real quick question, man. For you Christians out there, y'all say that, all people can make it, all people can do this, all people can do that, right? It all receive salvation. Even in the New Testament, so-called New Testament, because it's really all one testament. You gotta look up that Old and New Testament. That's why it's in the same book. If it was two different testaments, and it wouldn't be in the same book. Anyway, where in the scriptures, from beginning to end, where in the scriptures did it ever say, or did the Lord ever deliver whole heathen nations? Or should I say, where in the scriptures did any heathen nation pray to the Lord, whether it be Amorites or Jebusites or the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Perizzites, all of them, Ammonites or whoever else, the Moabites, whoever, and the Lord delivered them because and then He said, okay, now go sin no more. You pray to you. Cry and you pray to me, and I'll deliver you from your troubles. On the flip side, where did He ever deliver another nation or another heathen nation to another nation for disobeying God's laws? You will never see it, right? So let's continue on. Continuing on verse 4, it says, and it was through your people that the eternal light, that the eternal light of the law was going to be given to the world. There you go. So here we go with the death of the Egyptian firstborn. And I'm probably not going to read all of this. It says, when your enemies were carrying out their resolve to kill the babies of your holy people, there was one child who was abandoned but later rescued. Then you punished your enemies by killing a great number of their own children. There we go. This sounds a little bit like Ezekiel 9, right? I think it's Ezekiel 9, yeah. It says, but our ancestors, I'll skip a part. You drowned their whole army at one time in the rushing waters. But our ancestors, it didn't say Satan did any of this, all right? It says, but our ancestors had been told in advance of what would happen that night, so that they would be cheered and encouraged by confident trust in your promises to them. Your people knew that you would rescue the righteous nation and destroy their enemies. With the same act you punish our enemies, and did us the glorious honor of calling us to yourself. During all this time, devout people from this righteous nation were secretly offering sacrifices. There we go. Giving their word to each other that they would keep God's laws, and share each other's blessings and dangers. Already, they were chanting those ancient hymns of praise. All right. So that part of that, you could say it's prayers and everything, but part of that is also the Passover, because the killing of the firstborn sons was actually like directly pretty much the Passover, pretty much. All right. It says, but their enemies, uh, pitiful cries of grief echoed everywhere. Right? Oh my goodness. It says, as they mourned for their dead children, masters suffered the same punishment as their slaves. The king endured the same loss as the common people. There were too many bodies to count. That is insane. That's insane, man. That's pretty much like if you say this mass genocide right there. It says there were not enough people left to bury them all. It says in a single moment, their dearest children died. All of them met death the same way. These people had paid no attention to any warning, but relied instead on their magical powers. All right, but when their firstborn sons were killed, then they recognized that Israel was God's son. So back to the point that I wanted to make a little earlier, and I said I was going to save it for right now. Can you imagine us? We doing our whole ceremony and stuff like that. We throwing up prayers. We begging the Lord to look over us and bless us and to protect us, man. Right? But can you imagine doing that? Just picture this real quick, right? And I honestly, even if you do picture it, you almost can't even imagine it. That's something that you would have to go through to really get an idea of the times that we were in. Can you imagine you doing your whole ceremony, your whole Passover and everything, and you hearing the cries of mothers losing their children right outside your door? Your neighbor or your neighbor across the street, your neighbor next to you. Lord, you have two or three neighbors next to you. Your whole block, right? They're hearing the cries of fathers and mothers and siblings losing their children. Not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago, one of our neighbors across the street had lost a family member, and I think they was having some type of gathering or whatever. They was out there, they was eating the food and everything. They had a little gathering, and it was gloomy. It was a really, really gloomy time, and one of the women were screaming. I mean, they were bawling, crying, screaming, crying. Can you imagine hearing that while you're doing your Passover, but times 5? See, what you other camps, what you don't do is you don't capture. You don't put yourself in the mindset of these are urgent times, and I really don't understand why not. Because what are y'all up there doing concerts? What are you celebrating for? There is absolutely nothing to celebrate about. This is the time that you have to really, really start really preparing yourself. I did a video yesterday where all we can do is tell you people to get ready. That's all we can do. Whether you hear, whether you forbear, that's not up to us. I say this all the time. And that's why I wanted to get to this point, because like I said, you cannot possibly imagine you trying to focus on your ceremony, and that's what's going to put fear in you too. That's what really, I would imagine, really made us fear that time too. Hearing the cries of the people, of people losing their children. And they said the bodies were too much to count. So people are dying right outside your house and you trying to do a ceremony. Can you imagine that? See, Put yourself in that mindset when you're doing the Passover, man. The best you can, right? And that's why we do, and we try our best to keep the law, statutes, commandments, because these are things that the Lord has protected us from, man. And it's proven. This is almost going to be no different, man. You know what's get ready to happen. We know what's get ready to happen. This right here, oh man, the future prophecy is going to be worse than what this is explaining. So right now, Passover has, I mean, like I said, not just Passover, because you got a lot of Jake that wait until Passover to try to get right. Which means you're not right. I'm just saying in general. That's why we have Days of Atonements. Yeah, that's why we have Passover, Sabbath service, and all. We try to do all this stuff, man, because the last thing we want is to be left out there, not knowing what the hell to do when the Lord when the Lord pulls the plug on this place. That's the last thing we want. We're telling you that's the last thing that you want. All right. I'm gonna read the last few verses here. I'm gonna stop at verse 19. It says, "The short night was half over, and all was quiet and peaceful, when suddenly your threats were carried out. An invincible word of judgment spread from your royal throne in heaven, straight down to that doomed land. It came like a soldier in a fierce attack, carrying out your firm command with a fearful weapon, standing with feet on the ground and head touching the sky, filling the land with death." Whew. It didn't say anything about Satan doing anything remotely close to this. Anywhere, nowhere in the Bible did it say Satan did anything remotely close to this, man. Right? It says at that moment, the people who were about to die had terrible nightmares and were seized by sudden fear. All over the land all over the land they lay half dead, and let it be known why they were dying. So which means they knew full well why they were suffering like that. They knew why they were dying because their horrible dreams had told them. Right? Let's go down here. It says, "Death also came to the righteous nation, for an epidemic struck many of them while they were in the desert, but your anger did not last long." Now, we do know when the Lord does this to the Israelites, we know that they were wicked too, because amongst those Egyptians, some of them had to be Jake. You got to know some of them had to be Jake. When we are wherever we are, we spread our seed everywhere. So a lot. Some of us considered ourselves Egyptian, like Moses, right? So some of those Egyptians, you got to know were Jake. And even back then, the Lord was only looking out for the people, for his people, mind you, that sighed and cried to him. What did he do every time to the Israelites that disobeyed him? That didn't do what he was told. That didn't do what he was told to do. For example, the man that touched the ark when it was about to tip over. Well, the Lord struck him down because you weren't supposed to touch it. Every time the Israelites have done something that they weren't supposed to do, the Lord has always put hell on us. And it's the same thing here, man. But his anger towards us, if you believe it or not, is shorter. And that's what this is saying. See, this is a little season. This is a short season. Easy for me to say right now. Well, kind of easy for us to say right now because it feels long to us. But you got to remember, we owe the Lord's time. And time is speeding up. No doubt about it. All right. So I am going to stop right there because that was the point. This is just a little bit of an example as to why we do what we do, why we go out there on the highways and on the hedges, why we do these lessons in these videos, why we keep the commandments to the very best of our ability. You know what I mean? Why we throw up prayers every day. This is just a small example. If you just turn on your phone, you don't even have to look outside. You don't got to look outside. You can shut all your blinds. Stay in the house all day. And all you got to do, turn on the phone, look at YouTube, and see why we do what we do. right? Why we tell you that this is something way, way, way better waiting for us than this garbage that we're going through right now. All right. So that's all I got on this, man. I'm giving all praise on the glory to YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, Shalom.